Prohibition is among the most misunderstood chapters in world history, especially since we falsely assume it was a uniquely American history. In reality, more than a dozen countries banned the liquor trade around World War I. The first to do so was actually Imperial Russia, 5 years before the United States. In Russia, the complex of anti-alcohol measures quickly brought positive results. Labor productivity of the population has increased, and the number of crimes committed in a drunken state has decreased. However, the number of poisonings due to the use of surrogate began to go off scale. Efforts to combat alcoholism collapsed after the revolutionary events of 1917, although the new government at first proclaimed adherence to prohibition. On September 16, 1914, a law came into force in the Russian Empire banning the sale of vodka throughout the country until the end of the First World War. Strong alcoholic beverages were now sold only in restaurants, and although numerous ways to circumvent the law soon appeared, the average alcohol consumption per person decreased by more than 20 times. The restriction on alcohol turned out to be perhaps the only measure in which the Duma showed full solidarity with Nicholas II. The emperor himself resolutely fought against drunkenness, which he considered the main scourge of Russian society, throughout his reign. Particular attention was paid to sobriety in the army, where vodka was outlawed in 1908. As an alternative, officers were encouraged to drink light wine. Already in 1914, shortly before the outbreak of the war, a new Nikolaev order was activated, measures against the consumption of alcoholic beverages in the army. According to it, officers who appeared in a drunken state were subjected to strict disciplinary punishment up to dismissal from service. The work of the commanding staff was assessed by the degree of sobriety of subordinates. Regimental doctors and priests were charged with the duty to carry out work to promote sobriety among soldiers and officers. Division commanders were required in their annual reports to pay special attention to those issues that contribute to the formation of sobriety among their subordinates. In the armed forces, the strictest prohibition law was established. As indicated in Yevgeny Alferaev's book, Emperor Nicholas II as a Man of Strong Will, attempts to curb drunkenness met with stubborn resistance in the Council of Ministers, since deductions from the sale of alcoholic beverages accounted for 1/5 of state revenues. You can't build the well-being of the treasury on the sale of vodka. It is necessary to introduce an income tax and take all measures to reduce the consumption of vodka, said Bark, whom Nicholas II immediately after taking office instructed to improve the economic situation of the people, while not being afraid of financial losses, since the income to the treasury should come from inexhaustible sources of state welfare and productive labor of the people, and not from the sale of a potion that destroys the spiritual and economic forces of the majority of loyal subjects. The law of September 16, according to the Julian calendar, stopped the sale of vodka. The initiator of the extreme measure was personally the Minister of Finance Bark. Traditionally, the Duma opposed to the government this time supported the innovation. With her assistance, the Clinical Anti-Alcohol Institute was established in Petrograd. The decline in budget revenues was compensated by an increase in almost all types of indirect and some direct taxes and fees. I have already decided forever to prohibit in Russia the state sale of vodka, the emperor said in September 1914, accepting Grand Duke Konstantin Konstantinovich as a representative of the Union of Teetotalers. On August 1, on the initiative of its members, peasants Ilya Evseyev and Pavel Makogan, a legislative proposal was made, on approval for eternity in the Russian state of sobriety. By the highest approved regulation of the Council of Ministers on September 27, 1914, the City Duma and rural communities, and the regulation of October 13 of the same year and the Zemstvio assemblies for the duration of the war were granted the right to prohibit the sale of alcoholic beverages in the areas under their jurisdiction, the explanatory note said. By the will of the sovereign, the right to decide whether or not to be sobriety during the war was granted to the wisdom and conscience of the people themselves. The tale of sobriety, this is the eve of the earthly paradise, has become true in Russia. Crime has decreased, hooliganism has subsided, begging has decreased, Prisons have been emptied. Hospitals have become vacant. Peace has come to families. Labor productivity has risen, and prosperity has appeared. Despite the upheavals experienced, the village retained both economic stability and cheerful mood. Relieved by the heavy burden of drunkenness, the Russian people immediately rose and grew. Let it be a shame to all those who said that sobriety among the people is inconceivable, that it is not achieved by prohibition. It is not half measures that are needed for this, but one decisive irrevocable measure: to remove alcohol from free circulation in human society for eternity. The bill was signed by 82 members of the Duma. Anti-alcohol measures quickly brought positive results. So, in 1915, consumption decreased to 0.2 liters per person. Labor productivity grew by 9 to 13%, despite the large number of mobilized. Absenteeism decreased by 27 to 30%. The number of people arrested in a drunken state in Petrograd in the second half of 1914 fell by 70%, and the number of those taken to places of sobering up decreased by 29 times. The number of suicides on the basis of alcoholism in Petrograd fell by 50%. Similar indicators were obtained for 9 more provinces. By May 1916, 96% of private drinking establishments had closed across the country. The volume of cash deposits in savings banks increased. The increase amounted to 2.14 billion rubles, against 0.8 billion rubles before the ban. Some winemakers, in order to preserve profits, decided to take illegal actions. Restrictive measures on the sale of alcohol were gradually lifted by the Bolshevik government, which was looking for opportunities to replenish the treasury, from the early 1920s. Alternately, wine and beer received an amnesty, and in August 1925, the CEC and the Sovnarkom issued a decree on the resumption of production and trade in alcoholic beverages in the USSR in full. By the name of the then head of government Alexei Rykov, the name, Rykovka, was assigned to vodka among the people.